This is about the sixth video I've made of these evaluations, and by now everybody probably knows this, but just in case you haven't, all my Facebook evaluations that I am going to review here on camera are going to just be general scoring comments, word or two about layout, overall quality of texture. It's going to be about 5 to 7 minutes, unless I've got a little bit extra to say about some of the scores. And yeah, just please check this out, Facebook participants, if you're new to this. Please comment on each other's scores with feedback and support, just like I am showing you. And that is what makes it worth it to me. You know, don't worry about paying me back. Pay back your fellow participants with, you know, even if you don't know what to say, if you like the score, give them a thumbs up, you know, give them a like and tell them why you liked it. All right. Thanks much. Now on to the evaluations. So our first score in this new set of evaluations is by Niclas, and it is just out of this world in terms of, you know, a very Hollywood approach. Yeah, so the harp added here is actually really nicely done. It stands out from the texture very nicely in this little glissando here. You know, the only thing that I'm going to say here, since, you know, in terms of just an overall critique, is that you may be broadcasting a little too much. You know, you're really leading us to water, you know, like the old horse, right, to make us drink. And you're sort of really showing us what you're going to do next, right? So just don't be afraid to just throw in completely abrupt contrasts. And surprise us from time to time, rather than like showing us, hey, here we go. Do you know what I mean? So I mean, it actually does take a certain skill to score that way, to actually show us where you're going. And some people have not been doing that very much in these evaluations. But yeah, but you know, just, and you're doing it great, but just maybe not too much. Do you know what I mean? But yeah. But let's just talk about the scoring, really, besides that. And that is starting off with cello soli. And yeah, that all worked pretty well. It's nicely supported by the scoring. And interesting, you know, you got the trills here and then the horn solo coming in. And, you know, nice dovetailing. I would say pianissimo here, not piano. All right, because as soon as you start here, these guys are supposed to be the same dynamic level, right? Well, the horn is going to project. So if you really want this horn solo to just sort of swoop in underneath the cellos, then you got to mark it pianissimo and then have it come up to P or whatever, all right? And I would say throughout this, very good motivation, very good rhythm and, you know, and pulse, and just keeping everything going. That was just very strong. Okay. And now, sorry, just bring this down a little. Yeah, once again, huge scores, and it makes it very hard to read, even on a big screen. So that's why I'm sort of exaggerating the size of these pages a bit. Yeah, so taking it up from right about here, nice little oboe and clarinet duo. And, you know, just very kind of trembling, trilling strings in behind. This works really, really nicely. Triangle at pianissimo, it probably will have to be marked P because it's such a delicate instrument. So don't be afraid to bring that out a little bit. Yeah, and yeah, this is all fine. I'm just trying to bring up this page a little bit. And here, I think we're getting into a little bit too much. I mean, it's all playable with a lot of work, but it's, you know, is the arrangement worth the work for the player, right? To really, you know, do something quite so involved, right? So, anyways, this might be a bit of a rethink to sort of simplify the harp part a bit. You know, just as a general practice, if this were a score that was going to be played a lot. And this is nice. You know, once again, with all of these oboe flute duos, I don't think that they're as necessary as people feel that they are. And here you go A2, and there it's just first, and yeah, I'm gonna say that I think that it might be a little much, but as long as everybody's really controlling their timbre, it's not, it doesn't go really high for the oboe or anything like that. So I mean, it is workable, but um, yeah, I'm just seeing a lot of that. Okay, and now moving on to the next page. Okay, this was a cool little idea for piccolo, just going boom, beam. Yeah, and finally the strings really get to make a statement, and that's cool. And then the piccolo comes in over it, and you got this little it's as much as flutter tonguing at that speed. This kind of double tonguing staccato. Yeah, that's nice. Nice addition of the timpani here. Yeah, and then here things start to get a little more intense, and you might need a little bit more balancing between the winds and the brass than you think there. Especially with the melody going so low here. And it's got support from the clarinets, but is it really going to be enough for horns in a real situation not to overwhelm, right? So you have to think about that a bit. Right. And right now, once again, we have another one of these situations where the build up to the tutti is almost as big as the tutti, or in some ways maybe even a little bit more, right? Because we got, yeah, okay, so this is all right. The two flutes and and the oboe. This is all nicely done. You got that is just basically supporting the strings down here, and you've got this stuff in here. All throughout this, you have these little kind of like contrapuntal lines and counter melodies and all kinds of things. And since you are really going for a big Hollywood sound, I'd say that they're acceptable. Whereas I would normally say this is kind of cluttering things up a little bit. Now, and here it really gets somewhat egregious. All these triplets and so on, it's really not a simple sound and a straightforward, effective sound. It's more really, really, really frosted. Okay, I mean, it's still would work great in any kind of other scoring approach of another piece. But here it's just a bit much, and there's very little given to the little counter melody that goes through. If you're sort of thinking that the triplets are a version of that, the little counter line that just walks through, then I think it just needs a little bit more work on that particular thing. So that would be another strong reservation that I've got. But among very few reservations. This is nice. English horn. You have an overlapping pitch, but there is nothing. It is really not overlapping to anything but the oboe, which is a supporting part, right? This brighter voice over the clarinet may prove distracting. So yeah, so watch out there. Okay, this is nice though. The strings down here. Okay. Yep. This was I was happy with pretty much the rest of it. The saxophone solo is very cool, and trombone. Yeah, this should be scored in tenor clef, at least the part for the trombonist. This is kind of interesting that it goes to the brass right here just before the final little meltdown at the end. Yeah, so you've got oboe going to cello, going to bassoon, and then you sort of have this opposite direction kind of thing. Yeah, I'm happy with all that, and I really like the way that this ended as well, with the violins hanging over and then the other instruments coming in, to the added chord. And it's very, very much like the piano. So really, good work on this score, Niclas. It's just great to see that you're still in the game and you're still You're still doing lots of orchestration, and I feel that a lot of my critiques were on this were a bit picky. Just really kind of more talking about nuances than overall concerns. But yeah, this is a great score to check out if you want to see a very cinematic take on it, and kind of like a Hollywood, like an old time Hollywood style, like say of the of the 40s or 50s, just very grand, magnificent approaches to everything. So yeah, so you got that down. Great score. Thanks for sharing it. Next up is Samuel's version, and this is for a small orchestra, which I really like a lot. And it has a very discrete sound. I think there was an attempt here to score in the style of Borodin himself. And I will allow that it does that to a degree. I'll point out the places where perhaps there's a departure from that, okay? So there's in two main ways. Now, the first one is right on the first page, and that is I feel that you overemphasize the sense of 3/2 that is running through this syncopated part, right? So there are very few syncopated notes. There's this one and there's that one, right, that are running against the sense of 3/2, right? So if you overemphasize the 3/2, not saying that it's overemphasized, but if too much emphasis is placed on that rhythm, then you lose the cool sense of raggedness. One of the things that makes this piece really, really neat on the part of Maurice Ravel is that it somewhat anticipates ragtime in a bit. It's almost like a ragtime waltz because of the 3/2 syncopation going through it. Okay, but yeah, I just feel that just by having the pizzicato has that plucked sound, and the plucked sound is to an extent more emphatic than just the beautiful smooth sound of the bowing, right? So if the only pizzicato really happening is just right at this point here, in between the cardinal beats, then the sort of ragged feeling kind of dissipates a little bit. That would be my critique there. Now, as far as the scoring of this, that's all fine. It's nice. Now, yeah, solo cello. I don't feel that really came through your mock-up, that, the solo-ness of it. But yeah, maybe if it had been doubled, say, by bassoon or something like that, it would have stood out a little bit more, but that's just a mock-up concern. That's not an orchestral concern. Okay? So, nice. A little scrappy there on the slurring, right? You're slurring in between the bars, but you're not slurring any of the other pairs of notes. So that confuses me a bit. All right, continuing on. Now you go to solo viola. So the thing here is that solo viola plus solo cello, it's going to be an interesting sound, but maybe not quite as... there's a certain cheapening of the quality that happens when you have two violins playing the same linear kind of idea, right? And that may be a risk here, or it may not. It's more of a chamber thing, right? But surrounded by the other instruments. Of course, you've got pizzicato here, and the only thing that you have to worry about is the comparison to the bowed cellos, right? With just these two solo instruments. Now, if it's violas soli, then my apologies, but yeah. This is neat. Just little support there from the bassoons. That is going to blend in beautifully, and you don't really need to double it with any of the strings because it'll feel almost like strings. Now, this is kind of neat. That's actually more of a Ravel touch, I feel, than a Borodin touch. Da-da-da-dum, ba-bum, bum-bum. Now, look at these beautiful slurs here. Why couldn't these have made it into the melody over here? Right? That would have been kind of cool. Now, here, because we are doing this half legato, half détaché, so there's a little bit more emphasis running through here, then you do feel more of the syncopation here, right? And you're also, as opposed to here where you're really hitting, one, if we're thinking this is 3/2, 1 and 2 and 3, and you're going and, right, 2 and 3 and. So that actually works a whole lot better in terms of feeling the syncopation more, okay? And yeah, B-flat clarinets, probably good to warn us right here. 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, right? So we know what to expect. Okay. And this all works very good, very well supported. Very nice. And yeah, I like this little line in here. That's nice. Beautiful. Okay, now here, 1 solo. Now here, +2, I would just say A2, right? And if the entrance is going to be like right in the middle of the bar, right on this note, then split the voices, please, and have this be voice 1, and then just have voice 2 coming in, doubling the line right on this note. And then, and then you can say A2 here. Right? It's just easier to read for the score reader. That way it's just completely obvious what is going on right away. Right? And instead of, I don't know, +2, that's something I haven't quite heard, but it's a concern also in terms of like how it is actually going to be scored out in the parts, right? The second player is going to read a rest and then their part coming in on this note. So you might want to think about that. Or you could just put A2 right on this note and save the bother if that's what you want. Okay, not so sure that A2 oboes will work all that great above a solo bassoon. And, just because this is going to have almost a coarse trumpet-like sound, even if they're playing softly. Refer to the A2 oboes that I talked about in this month's Rachmaninoff lesson. They just really have a very penetrating sound. Okay, and I'm also seeing kind of a lack of nuance throughout the phrases, right? There's just almost no little, well, there aren't any little hairpins here and there sort of guiding the phrase, in different ways. So it's just completely up to the players. And I don't think you should do that when you have several soloists at once. They should all be guided in how you want your inflections to go throughout your line. Or else everybody will either do their own thing or they will just follow what the loudest player is doing. This is all nice. These upper strings. I think that's quite good scoring. Okay, and I don't think you need to do A2 flutes here. Just single flute. This is nice phrasing. Bum ba da 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 da. Nice. Now I've read a couple of humorous comments about my singing along with things, and it's just very careless. It's just what I do inside my mind when I'm thinking about how things are going to sound in terms of bowing and tonguing. This is all nice. I do something similar to this in my arrangement, not at this moment, but you guys will see for yourselves. Now here you have unison A2 flutes and unison with A2 clarinets. That is going to be a really thick sound there. And then, of course, you've got the oboes in the middle. Yeah, I mean, this is all good. That's all good. I like this little tremolo here. Yeah, and then suddenly it jumps up here. And it sort of feels like there's something hanging out, and then you come back to it. So I think right here you are spending your sense of surprise for those high notes, right? Right? So because the next note here is E flat here, right? Not E flat there. You put it here, and then this E flat doesn't come along as something new. It's just like, oh yeah, we're back to E flat way up above the staff. Right? So it's, yeah, just, and then you're going back to here, and that reuses this position. So I don't feel that that is the strongest place. Yeah, maybe you're trying to keep your flutes from going into their weak spot, but hey, why not just use clarinets there instead of flutes? And then the flutes can come back here more strongly and more individually, along with doubling the strings. Anyways, and this is fun. This arpeggiation is very cool. So yeah, so there's some strong scoring in here, but I feel that some of the you might want to tweak some things if you really want it to sound more Borodin-like, and to let the individual qualities of the notes come out, right? More than just assuming that they will sound better with A2. They usually will not, better to, let a soloist be a soloist. All right, thanks so much, Samuel. This is a very cool score. I really appreciate you sharing it with us. All right, our third score is by Benjamin. And just a few quick scoring notes. You've got a brace over the first and second violins. You don't need to do that. It's. I mean, I see what you're doing. You kind of need it for here. So, but you kind of have a brace and a brace. Do you see what I'm saying? You've got the big brace and you've got the, you've got the sort of fancy one as well. So, kind of a little bit of overkill. And also you mention, that you are going to be splitting this up into, you show that you're going to be splitting this up into divisi groups, but then you don't do that until the very end of the piece or of your arrangement, which is right here. So you don't have to show that on the first page, all right? So let's back up a little bit. This score's got lots of stuff in it and, some pretty good stuff. I would say, critique is that, yes, you are sort of adding a phrasing mark here, kind of like sort of saying everything legato. But like, look, it really is way better for you to work out how your winds are going to be breathing and how your strings are going to be bowing, because that's the information that they need, right? They would rather see small groups because they can figure out the whole idea that the line is one big idea. And after they rehearse it a couple times by themselves, practicing and then rehearsing with the orchestra, they'll figure out what the phrase is. You don't need to add this big long phrase here. That does not substitute for bowing marks and for breathing marks. So, not bowing marks for slurs showing where the bow should go. This is a bowing mark, right? I don't know why you need to go up bow on it, because that implies that the note is going to have an increase in volume, right? Because it starts from soft and goes to loud as the bow approaches the string, as the place where the hand is holding the bow approaches the string. So this is really unnecessary. I'd say just leave out that bowing mark. Let the player figure out, let the concertmaster figure out how the bowing is going to go. Okay. This is kind of interesting. This bassoon to contrabassoon thing. That's kind of fun. Yeah, so clarinet added to divisi cellos. Okay, and then here you sort of tack on the flutes, or the first flute onto the solo clarinet. Now at this point, the flutes and the B-flat clarinet just kind of go off and do their own thing without any support from the strings. Okay, so I mean that's all cool. But the problem here is that the flute is in a very weak place, right? If you want more support there to the B-flat clarinet, then maybe marking it A2 would work better. Not so sure, but yeah, I mean, what's wrong with just letting the clarinet do what it's doing there, and the cellos do what they're doing there, and not have to blend everything, right? Just let the cellos speak, and then let the flute or the B-flat clarinet speak, rather than having to sort of blend them all together all the time. I mean, it's interesting to play with the colors. Now, you're marking this P, and you're putting an accent here and then a diminuendo at P. This should be pianissimo, because it will just blare out from the middle of this, right? It just will punch a hole right through this beautiful texture. And the same thing here. Saying, hey, down bow, and then a decrease, right? It's just really kind of giving the players, just telling them to stand out. Also putting the accent mark here. Like here is where you want things to die down, right? But there's an implied push right here. So it's a little bit too big of a push for the delicacy of the music that you've got there. And once again, completely unnecessary to mark the bowings for everybody. That's just, unless you are the concertmaster, then, even if you are a string player, don't mark your own bowings. Let the concertmaster work it out unless there is one particular thing you really want them to do. Okay? This is nice. This is all fairly simple scoring. Viola's taking over and, harmonizing and, just very basic, simple string scoring. And it's going to work very nicely. Um, yeah, and here, yeah, first violin. Okay, you should really just have both staves and have the divisi one continuing on, the one with nothing on it. And that is way better for the conductor to read, okay, than just, than first cellos and second cellos. It's better to continue them on and have the blank staves. And then the conductor immediately knows what's going on and won't look and say, they won't get the mistake in their mind that there should be all cellos here. Okay? So, yeah, just make things as easy as possible. Once again, this is too big of a punch in your texture. All right, pianissimo, though, that's a good idea, but you don't even need to put the accent mark, right? Or the down bow here, right? Okay. This is nice. Boop, 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 boop. And nice solo violin. Now, if you really want this to have a sense of overlapping or dovetailing, then first note is taken over by the next note, right? So that the last note, last note overlaps the first note. And then that is a perfect dovetail. Okay, this is all good. Nice common sense scoring. This is going to be hugely powerful, though. All the violins, because you have to think, how many violins are there in a small orchestra or small to medium orchestra? There are 30 violins, right? There are 16 firsts and 14 seconds, right? So that would be like a medium size orchestra. Okay, and then how many of the rest are there? 30, right? Because if you just go back, if you go down the whole thing, 12 plus 10 plus 8 equals 30, right? So when you put all 30 of these players on this one note, it really just penetrates, even if you're marking everything mezzo forte to sort of be more careful about it. Okay, so just a bit strong. And then you're just kind of giving the violins everything to do, right? So it's just really all about the violins. And there's like no, since we got into this and had the flutes do something, or the first flute do something, from then on, it is all pretty much just violin sound. You can put A2 on those flutes as much as you like, but with this much power, 30 violins playing that one note, the flutes are just going to be a bit of a textural element, right? And then this is kind of nicely done. See, this is more spread out scoring. I like this. And I do like the counter melody going through horns, and this is going to scream, though. Fortissimo on the brass is better off forte, okay? Because this is way overbalanced, especially big fat octaves going up to B flat, written B flat in the French horn. That is just going to be a screamingly high note. That's like Rite of Spring, a Rite of Spring octave, right? So just really back off. Otherwise, pretty nice, pretty functional. I like this. It all pretty much works. And nice cool down for the most part. And this is fiddly, mezzo forte to mezzo piano to just trash the mezzo schmezzo. Just go down to P, all right? Your fortissimo here, and then maybe mark an F diminuendo here, and then put like a P at the end of your, just put one last little, hairpin, and then put like P at the end to tell us where you're going, right? Because this is fiddly. Mezzo piano here, mezzo forte there. We don't, nobody is going to balance that. Not even the conductor, right? They're all going to be listening to each other and thinking, oh, this is what mezzo piano means on that other guy's score, not realizing the other guy's score has mezzo forte. It's just too much time to worry about. This is nice. Little clarinet at the end. You don't need the violas. The violas could just harmonize and just be clarinet. This is nice too. Yeah, not enough contrast here. It's da 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 ba da 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 da. I almost feel like there's just the continuity of the clarinets going through is going to rob the sense of pulling back right here. And trumpet, that's all fun. You actually don't need to do this. The players can, this is neat the way you overlap it, but the players can easily just shift to the next note, right? And get to all of these pitches one after the other. Right, and then you end with this. Okay, I mean, it would all work pretty well. And I would have been interested to hear what your mock-up sounded like. But I mean, I can see it all the way it will really sound. But sometimes it's nice to know what the mock-up is telling the composer or arranger what their piece sounds like to them, right? So sometimes you can say, oh, well, the mock-up is fooling your ears here, or things are stronger than you think or weaker than you think. But yeah, but nice. I really appreciate you sharing the score with me. I had a lot of fun looking at it, and please don't take my criticisms the wrong way. They're just really, I feel there's a lot of strong stuff here that can be built on, and you took a lot of care in your scoring, so I really do appreciate that. Okay, so our next score is by Gaylor, and I'm starting right at the very end. There is like a fastidious approach to like really trying to be French in like the names of everything and to make this feel like a French score. However, right here you say let ring, right? Instead you should have LV, L period V period, all right? And that will give you more of a French kind of a score. I thought I would mention it just because I was at the end of the score and I noticed that. And yeah, that, if you're obsessed with that usage and no reason why you shouldn't be, then all good. Okay, so now back to the beginning of the score. I really, really enjoyed this. Yeah, I like this. I like the fact that you really paid attention to a lot of details. The slurring was good, and breathing was good. It was all very well marked. Lots of great nuances and lots of attention to the dynamic details. And yeah, all great. So probably the things that I can help you with most are like things like balancing and other things, scoring details, rather than having to obsess so much over tiny little details. I mean, there are one or two things which I'll point out as we go, but yeah. But this is nice and good balance between them. You could even mark this pianissimo because you're just diminuendoing down again. It doesn't have to follow the same line. It can sit warmly in the background. Keep in mind, if you're going bum, 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 you're actually going bum, bum, bo, right? This is going to be like way lower than I can sing, right? This really low A flat. So yeah, just that was something that kind of stood out. See, now here you do it at pitch, at doubling at the pitch. And, the other thing too to think about is whether or not you just really want this to be so smooth, right? You're right in the same exact ballpark in terms of pitch with the violas, right? I mean, it's just right up against them, inside them, with this A flat, and this A flat is going to set up a sort of a like a tone cluster, right, with the positioning of everything together. So whereas pizzicato wouldn't, right? Okay, and then you start doubling here. This is going to be a fairly warm line, against almost, you have a little bit of harmony here, and yeah, and that's all good, but yeah, we sort of have lost the harmonization of the melody when we get to here, in terms of its activity, right? So, anyways, just something I noticed. Moving on. Yeah, you don't have to do this -2, +2. I'm seeing that on a lot of scores. It's just easier to read if you just say 1, we know. We know that's 1. We know it's the first guy. You don't have to tell us what -2, +2. And when the other one comes in, just write A2. And see right here. So we know this is A2. You don't have to mark A2 until you get to here. See? So that was kind of unnecessary. I mean, that's nice. That might be a new scoring standard that has come along since I was doing, since I studied, but I mean, I just feel it's just, I know. You know what I mean? I see that and I already know. It's just cluttering up the score for me as a score reader. Now, this is an interesting little touch here. What you have to understand about effects like this is that they just really sit in the background and they just kind of rumble along, and sometimes they can be a little distracting. After a while you sort of feel like, is there some noise in this room? What is that showing up in my headphones? And it's just the timpani sort of carefully doing its little role in the background. I almost wonder if, like, cellos wouldn't have served you better here if you really had wanted that sort of sense of tension, whereas the roll on the timpani has a kind of a different effect. It kind of has a sort of a buzzing background effect. I mean, it's tremendously dramatic in its own way, but I'm not so sure that it serves this texture very well. I like this pizzicato going up to arco. That's really nice. And I like this harmonized thing between between the first and the second violins. That's all good. Nice scoring. But here, I'm not so sure if I agree with the fattening of this line. With oboe, first oboe plus first flute. I'm not so sure how effective that is. And there's no support for the second violins, right? Could we have put just ditched the oboe and put clarinet down there, doubling this, and maybe gotten a little bit more of an integrated texture there, as opposed to having a really bright feel to the top note or the top line here, and just not so much support on the harmony. Something to think about. The triangle on the last page was very cool, though. And then this is just really big. Adding the piccolo an octave higher, it's just really going to make that stand out, and yeah, just all of a sudden, this is something where, like, an effect where Ravel would almost feel compelled to do a sweep up to it to sort of like call attention to it, so it wouldn't just suddenly appear. That's what I feel what might happen there. And also, when you have such high pitches here, you are ending on B flat right here as compared to where the solo violin line is. So that means when the solo violin comes in here, this high E flat, there is nothing high about it compared to what the piccolo just did, right? So it's coming in, over the same territory, and there's nothing to really distinguish it, as opposed to cutting the piccolo and then just hearing this stand out as a new pitch. It's like something that is coming into it, very nice and new and also very clear, because it's a very cool idea. Is just the very sparse, little horn in the background, boop boop on the clarinet, and the oboe supporting. Yeah, it's a nice, it's very cool texture. But yeah, I just feel that the setup doesn't quite give it the sense of individuality that it would have without that piccolo. And yeah, this is nice. You're giving these horn players these really nice long ties and just having them trade off. That's fine. And then I'm not sure if you need to roll into this. Do you know what I mean? I think that it does what it needs to do well and good. I think the moment to mark tutti is just here. Just mark this as, just mark this as tutti here. Just put this, a copy of this right here and put tutti over it. And that's a better place to end the solo, or a better way to end the solo than this right here, I feel. You want to end on this C flat. That is a concern there. I mean, almost wonder if you could have just done a double stop here, because the sound of this is going to be pretty big. I mean, I see what you're doing here. I'm not going to criticize it too much, but just wondering if there is a better way to do this. Yeah, and then I like this triangle, timpani and cellos. That's all cool. Yep, and then this is going to be a very piercing, very blocky high sound. Forte, accent, right? So, and also look at the slurring. Right? So what if it were da? You know what I mean? It just has more emphasis and it's easier to tongue, right? As opposed to I just don't feel that this slurring strategy is all that effective. Neither is this. That just like emphasizing it by tonguing at the end, I think is a more effective way of just punching this. Okay, everything else is pretty cool. I like the strings. I like the octaves in the In the violins, I just feel this is really high. I mean, yeah, E flats and Fs. The oboist can play that. A really good oboist can do that. But like A2, way high up there. I mean, this is just more of a flute line to me. And then I know you're trying to save the flutes for right here, right? But maybe you just like don't even have any, maybe just spare the doubling till you get to here. Okay. And this is good. There needs to be more of this counter melody. You're pretty much giving almost everything to the main melody, right? Even the horns, right? Dun dun ba 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 bum bum. And also, like, not so sure that is a good strategy for the horns while everybody else is doing different things. Also, the clarinets, Okay, and nice cool down. Everybody's doing fairly good cool down, so this is better, I guess. I dislike slurring from a pickup over a downbeat. I just feel that's just kind of weak, as opposed to emphasizing the ba da 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 as da. Yeah. And yeah, cool idea for the piccolo. Very, just a very, very high color right there as you do. Yeah, and you want to sort of, you don't need to do -2. We can see that. It's right. It's all right there. So yeah, I mean, a lot of very mixed scoring as opposed to, solo elements that stand out and have their own kind of, color and their own soloing. Yeah. So, yep, this is all pretty good. Nice English horn solo. Yep. No problems with any of that. There was something here at the end that stuck out for me. Yeah, that I sort of wanted to warn you about. Yeah. Right. So you're adding second piccolo here, right? And you're giving the second plenty of time to get ready for that moment. That's nice. Yeah, okay. I know what it was. It was the tam-tam. Okay, so the thing is, like, they're going to have to damp that here. Okay, also the triangle is going to sort of sound like a telephone ringing a little bit. I mean, you marked pianissimo. So, yeah, just wondering about this. Maybe if the crescendo was to here and you let go here so that it would have more of a natural cool down. Because really, this is not a crescendo passage, right? There's nothing crescendoing here, right? So the tam-tam getting bigger and bigger, it's going to kind of swallow some of the distinctness or some of the specialness, especially of the... there's a slightly, not scratchy, but there's a slightly sandy texture to tremolo, to high tremolo, right? And that is going to get a bit swallowed by the higher partials. Even at triple, quadruple P with the tam-tam, if you're going to hear anything from the tam-tam at all, like if the conductor says, oh, we need a little more tam-tam here because I can't hear it, you bring that up, and then you start to lose that nice whispering quality because it sort of gets swallowed by the tam-tam. So I just warn you about that in this kind of texture. Otherwise, really fun. Oh yeah, this last thing was, if you really want your pizzicato to ring out, you got to give it to the cellos, right? Because right here, the length of string, even though the violas do have a longer sound, they really don't have that long of a sound, So just this B natural would be a nice long pitch, if it were played, say, like on the G string, where there's the of the cello, where there's the longest, or the A string. Sorry, I meant to say. So yeah, so if this were played on the A string with the cello, then that would give it the longest amount of time. So you could even do this like divisi second cellos if you really wanted to keep this soli. Anyway, that's all I had to say about it. Really nice. Thank you so much for sharing this great look at the piece, and and some great strategies and some really fun stuff in this. I'm honored by everybody's contribution, and scores like this bring it all into perspective. Thanks so much. Our last score for this round is Chris's score, and it's just really a delightful arrangement. I mean, this is one that's fun to listen to, in its mock-up. So Chris has posted a link to it in the YouTube group, and just go check it out and have a listen to it. I felt that was like one of the most successful of the mock-ups, just in terms of expressing really what was on the page. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't give you a little bit of help with it, all right? So, starting off from the beginning, this is nice. This is fiddly, right? So, piano, crescendo, piano, crescendo. We know this is mezzo piano. You want to do a further crescendo, and that's fine. You could just mark crescendo there, right? So the person knows even more than and, right? But I mean, everybody knows that's going to be mezzo piano, all right? So you don't need to put that there. Now, here's the problem with this beautiful idea, okay? And that is you have marked the clarinet P and the viola's pianissimo on the same notes, which, by the way, this is a C score, everybody, in case you hadn't noticed before, which, yeah. Anyway, I actually, this is funny, I have to adjust. I'd say, oh yeah, that is an actual concert G flat. But when I get it transposed, I just immediately transpose in my head, and I know that if I'm going to read this, it's going to sound this, right? If this is transposed, right? If it's going to, if it reads A flat, I'm going to see it as a G flat or hear it as a G flat in my head. Everything else is nice. I like the pizzicato bass on the bottom and the bowing on top. See, I was sort of getting after people for doing too much bowing, too much arco on the bass line right away, so that it all sort of sounded too smooth. But with the pizzicato beneath the arco in the cellos, then you get the best of both worlds. So that was a neat idea. And I really thought that the bassoon solo was very effective here. Just that, but this should be marked pianissimo to match the violas, or the strings could be, these strings here could be piano, and the clarinet could be pianissimo, right? And the bassoons could just be piano. And, knowing that it's a solo, mark one solo here, and then the player will make sure to stand out from the texture better. And this is nice. The clarinets, or the first clarinet taking over the line here, and the horns being in the background, that was good. The horns actually don't need to crescendo here, right? They can just stay in the background, right? And you don't need to mark this accent here to match the accent of the second violin. They can just do what they're doing and stay in the background, and you get the nice, warm, mixed sound here of the seconds and the violas matching with sort of a horn pad, right? This is also messing me up, actually, because I would read this, if I were reading a horn part, this would be written middle C, right? As opposed to written F below middle C. And I would think it, oh yeah, and then I'm looking at this, wow, that is low. It's like, oh, wait a second, that's not a sounding B flat, that is a sounding F. Anyway, yeah, so, and this is good. Really, really nicely placed clarinet part. I really like that. I like the support of the bassoon for the oboe here. Those are really nice to work together. And look at this, how the strings back away. They let the winds do what they're going to do. And that is great scoring. I really like that. And then here, flutes supported by clarinets, and just this one little, reaching upwards with the second violin to follow the accompaniment. That's really cool too. So yeah. Yeah. Nice. Okay, and then finally the violins come in. Oh yeah, and just to mention, the triangle is very cool. You might want to cut back on it a little bit. It gets a bit much later on, but it's very, very cool right here. And I like the boop, 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 boop. That's nice. Yeah, that's very cool. You let the first violins be the first violins, and you got the flute here. How many flutes? All right, we have one flute, I guess. Okay. All right, so that's all good and nice overlapping. Now, here is a neat thing that you're doing, is you are sort of slurring into the down. You're slurring across the pickup into the downbeat, and then you are emphasizing the end of the slur on the downbeat. That is very, very effective. So that's one of the exceptions to, too much slurring across the across to the downbeat. Slurring into the downbeat when it's got an articulation and a lift is also a very, very effective way of accentuating the downbeat. So in this case, the downbeat is not lost, right? The impetus of the dotted rhythm, okay, going into that's just really, really nice. And I love this staccato. That's very, very well done. Really got me thinking about phrasing. So yeah, so very nice. And good support, clarinets, doing what the second violins are doing an octave lower. I like that a lot. Good, simple scoring. And violas and first violins and octaves, very, very good sound. Okay, and then you finally get to the big fortissimo appassionato. That should be marked forte, because that is just going to punch a hole right through your texture. I keep saying that. Punch a hole through your texture. But yeah, that is what is going to happen there, is that it's just really going to blare, right? Now, here we've got the main melody, violas, first violins, piccolo, flute, and clarinet. So 3 octaves apart. And here we've got the counter melody, just second violins, 2 octaves above the horns, with the trumpet in the middle. And then, of course, the trombone taking the bass line with the lower strings. So that is a very simple, very effective way to handle this. Now, could you have supported the second violins with your oboe? Sure, you could have, right? Could you have just really made this bass line emphatic with the with the bassoons on the cellos? You could have done that too. Okay, you didn't have to. And it's nice because you left these players free to just, to breathe and be completely ready to do this, right? Of course, they are being, they're kind of doing what they're doing below the second violins taking over the melody, but still, it's a nice idea, and it does not take away from those sounds being audibly a wind support of, from below of the second violins. And, nice little horn coming in there, saying its piece. Okay, and, once again, imbalance in the texture, right? So this is going to stand out a bit, alongside these violas, but that's all right. I mean, see, here it's not so bad because they're all P, right? And the clarinetist has more of an impulse to blend, right? If they're all piano. Now, if they were both mezzo piano, then it would stick out quite a bit. Okay, and you could mark this one solo piano espressivo and cut the M, because you're already doing this, right? I mean, piano solo crescendo, the player will stand out from the players around him. Maybe you won't stand out on your playback, but you don't. I mean, mezzo piano for the beginning of a solo is just, it's a nothing dynamic, right? It's a nothing color. Piano crescendoing and diminuendoing around its big, beautiful world of piano. That is something that is really worth hearing from an orchestra player who's at the top of their game. Oboe solo here. That's very, very cool. I like all the nuances that you put in this. Just really telling everybody what you want. This doesn't quite make sense, piano diminuendo to piano, but whatever. I think maybe you were considering to go to pianissimo here, right? In which case, so should the clarinet be. All right. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. And nice contrast, right? So, boom, ba, boom, ba, ba, da, ba, da, 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 da. Really, really cool. Simple, effective. And then clarinet comes in, bum, ba, da, 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 da. Oh. Yeah, and then horn, dovetailing to bassoon, and you've got that same flick off of the downbeat, and ending with staccato going down to the bottom. And this is cool. And I like this. You have this this chord, which is all artificial harmonics, outlasting your winds. And your winds, apparently, I mean, you will hear them stop, right? I mean, you could have the clarinets go down to niente, and sort of maybe the flutes, not the oboes, though. I mean, you could kind of have this swallowed into this if you really wanted to, but I mean, it works. Either way, it works, and that's really nice. Okay, and you give the string players, just a beat to position their hands, in this case, position the fingers on an A flat and add the fourth before you come in with this in the middle. It's a beautiful warm chord at the end, so nicely done. So excellent work, Chris. And yeah, I just feel that this particular batch had some great scoring in it. Just, obviously some people with some, either with some experience in orchestration or some really good ideas that were worth trying out and came all together into this challenge. So yeah, just once again, I'm really feeling honored by everybody's contributions so far. I think I've gotten 37 contributions so far. This is the 32nd one, and I'm going to hopefully upload 4 or 5 more tomorrow. And yeah, and we'll just keep on cranking till the 7th of November. So thanks again, everybody.